What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and it is time once again to talk about Chelsea because things have been going pretty smoothly. I've not gotten a chance to review the last 3 games, so I'm going to give kind of some quick thoughts and some observations that I had that I just personally want to give some acknowledgement for, because even the loss, there's a lot of positives to take from all 3 of these games that I feel like once again show Maresca's taking this team in the right direction. And it still shocks me, still blows my mind. Go back to my videos in the preseason and the first game of the season. Completely blows my mind that we have seen this turnaround this quickly from just bringing in the right manager to get this team together. But yeah, it's been very, very solid. And starting with the Liverpool game, I mean, yes, it's a loss, but honestly, this is probably the happiest I've been with a loss, which I know sounds weird. We should never be happy to lose. But honestly, I'm somebody, I tend to focus on the criticisms more because I see those criticisms and I want to bring them up, especially because these are review shows. I want to make sure I show both the good and the bad. Honestly, looking at the Liverpool match, there's not a whole lot of criticisms I can take out of that. I mean, first of all, we're playing at Anfield, so that's already a difficult match, but also it's right after an international break, so you can give some concessions in that regard. I think overall it was still a pretty solid game from us. I look at that loss compared to the Man City loss. I don't know what some people talk about the Man City loss as if we played the game so well, just Man City were that much better. I didn't see that. I saw we were still so far off of it, especially coming off of the preseason. There's still a lot of issues. Looking back now, I can say that a lot of those issues were Maresca still hadn't quite found his first 11, still hadn't quite got some of these players working under his system and playing how he wanted them to play. And on top of that, I think Palmer was not at his best that day. So I think a lot of those issues have since come a long way, and we've seen improvement there. The Liverpool match, kind of similar in the sense that I do think Palmer wasn't at his best, but I think the team overall looks so much better. I think we gave Liverpool a game because Palmer maybe marked out of the game a little bit, maybe not quite playing to his standards, but I think everybody else played pretty well. Barring, I will talk about the defense a little bit more in depth, especially when we get to the Newcastle game. But I think I'm looking at just how we're set up. I'm looking at the players we have on the pitch. A lot of these guys are starting to really show their quality. They're starting to really show how good they can be. And not to get too in-depth, because if I did, then this video would take way too long, but to point out some of the players that for me really impressed, even in a loss against Liverpool, I think Jackson has come leaps and strides from last year. I think you look at the goal against Liverpool, you look at his goal against Newcastle, both of those goals are ones that last season probably would have missed. Probably would have put just wide or skied it or taken too many touches. But he's got a lot more confidence this season, and he's playing a lot more like what we expect a striker to be. I think he's still got some gaps in his game that can improve. There's a little bit of a lack of consistency, but I think the more he plays, there's a very good chance he could be a top quality striker. You know, there's already comparisons being made that he started quicker than Drogba even did. I don't know if he'll reach those heights, but it's promising to see that he's still early days. It's only his second season here, and he's already kind of got accustomed to the Premier League for the most part. I still think, like I said, the consistency needs to grow. I think some of his decision-making could improve. But all in all, I think he's really shown what a good asset he is to this team. To the point where all these people that are saying they want Nkunku to start over him, I just have to look at them and go, are you watching the game? Or are you just watching the highlights? If you're watching the highlights, then yeah, Nkunku probably looks better because he has more quality in the finish than Jackson does, and you're probably seeing a lot of Jackson's misses. If you watch the overall game, though, Jackson's ability to dictate the play up front and how well he steps back, gets on the ball, and makes things happen, I don't think you can sub that out for Nkunku, because I think you lose something in the overall team's play. But yeah, I think Jackson played really, really well against Liverpool. I think another one that I don't think I could say enough about how much he's improved is Caicedo. I was very critical of him last season. If you watch some of my videos from last season, I never thought he was going to be a Chelsea player, or at least a quality Chelsea player. But my God, from the end of last season to now, he started there under Pochettino. He had some really good games, and now he is so invaluable in the midfield. He's not quite reached the Conte level, but he's getting close. He's getting real close to being that type of midfielder that can just break up play, win the ball back, and make it look so easy while he's doing it. I think the only thing that I want a little bit more consistency from him is his quality on the ball. He's put some good passes forward this year. The one assist that he had against Liverpool for Jackson's goal, I think shows that he has that capability, but he doesn't quite do it enough. And I think sometimes when he's on the ball, even just outside of passing, his dribbling, I think he can be a little bit lackadaisical, I guess is the right word. I want to see a little bit more improvement there. I want to see the quicker touches, the more composed touches from him. But in reality, it's not like he's terrible with that. It's not like he's Robert Sanchez. It just does worry me sometimes whenever there's high press from the other team that if Caicedo gets on the ball, 50-50 chance he's going to lose it or get picked, and now all of a sudden they're going to be running at us with Caicedo out of the play. The other player that is still early days returning from injury, so we'll see how he does, Lavia. I think Lavia is showing what a quality midfielder he can be. He played really well against Liverpool. I thought he had a decent game against Newcastle. I think his performance against Liverpool was better, but from what I'm seeing from him, he's got that defensive capability that Caicedo has too, where he can win the ball back, break up the play really well in the midfield. But he's also got a little bit of a Kovacic ability in his dribbling, his turn of pace. He can get away from players really well. Showed a little bit of that against Liverpool too. So I don't know if he's going to be that type of player. And again, injuries are clearly affecting him. We'll see if he's just that energy of I'm back, I'm fit from injury, so I've got a lot of that excitement of being on the field again. We'll see if that wears off and maybe he drops off a bit. But early signs are he's going to be a good quality midfielder that can be that box to box, get up and down, be on the ball, make things happen, but also break up play really well. And in a way that I don't think Kovacic was really able to. I think his ability on the ball was undoubted, but unfortunately when it came to the other side of things, he was a little bit slow, a little bit naive in some of his challenges. I don't really think he ever really got the defensive side of his game down. Lavia, it feels like, is already further ahead of him there, and I think from what I've seen, he can have that ability to have that quick turn of pace and get away from a defender and break down the field at pace too. But outside of that, just looking at the Liverpool game overall, I think it's one of those, the team played pretty well. Our defense is still very suspect. We have a lot of issues, a lot of gaps back there. Sanchez in goal is still not great. People are going to look and say, well, we didn't have Cucurella or Fofana. Cucurella, I do think, is a bit of a miss because he's grown pretty well this year. He's doing a good job of breaking up play. Still a bit naive defensively, but he still has a lot of energy that can cause issues for the other team. Fofana, I don't think is that much of a miss, to be honest, and I'll talk more about him when we get to the Newcastle game. But I think having those two out of the side whenever that's been your back four, throwing Reece James in for his first game back, starting him, I do think there was a little bit of a mix-up back there that maybe contributed to a couple of nervy moments just throughout the match. But I think overall, just the quality is not really there to be defensively solid. And I don't think Sanchez, even though he started the season pretty well, had a couple of very ugly games from him, and obviously his passing leaves a lot to be desired. But I think overall he's been fine. I just don't think he's a top quality keeper that's going to inspire the defense with how much confidence he has. And I think a good example of that is if you compare Alisson and Kelleher's stats in goal, because somebody did post those, Kelleher makes a lot of saves and has also conceded a lot, whereas Alisson, he doesn't concede that much, and he also doesn't make that many saves. I think a lot of that is down to Alisson overall is just a better keeper, and I think he works with the defense better to where he's not having to make that many saves. They work well as a unit to keep those chances from coming in, whereas Kelleher, he's a good keeper, he makes some good saves, but he and the defense don't really work as well together, which means he's facing more chances overall because there's a lack of organization back there. I think Sanchez, we're seeing a lot of that too. We're seeing that he's a good shot stopper. He'll make some good saves, but I think he and the defense, there's this lack of communication, this lack of organization that allows for a lot of easy chances to come in that he will save most of them, I would say. But it's got to be better. You got to keep those easy chances from happening. And like we saw against Liverpool, like we saw against Newcastle, those chances are happening too often. And we can't always rely on the other team missing like some of what we saw against Newcastle. It's got to be overall just more organized back there. And I think, unfortunately, it means we're going to have to go get a better keeper, better defender. And it's really going to shore up that back line and make sure that we're not facing as many chances as we do. The final thoughts on the Liverpool game, I think you have to give Liverpool credit. Arne Slot's come in. He's done a good job of getting them organized and taking this Klopp team. And while I do think he's still trying to implement his own style into this, he's got these quality players that he's managed to earn their trust and get them to play for him. And they've done well so far. They've clearly still got that organization. They've still got that quality. I do think we will see them grow as the season goes on. But I think he's shown a willingness to try different things. I think when we played him, it clearly showed he was willing to set up maybe a little bit more defensively, let us have more of the ball so they could hit us on the counter. I do think also he did a really good job of keeping Cole Palmer out of the game. I think I'm not really the biggest fan of Curtis Jones. I don't rate him that highly because he has moments, but overall his play leaves a lot to be desired. But I think he did a really good job of marking Palmer out of the game and then getting forward as well and getting in the box and being dangerous. I mean, he won 2 penalties, one of which was correctly overturned, and then got himself a goal too. So, yeah, I think his overall play, it's one of those games where you have to just sort of acknowledge they had a couple players that really stood up and did their job. Their defense did their job really well, and Jones did a really good job in the midfield. That being said, I mean, we still, like I said, showed a lot. I will talk a little bit about VAR as well because, yeah, the Sancho penalty, there was even an apology coming out and saying that should have been looked at and it wasn't. There is that frustration that we had a chance to equalize because of that missed penalty call. So that is frustrating, but you can't rely solely on the VAR to do the job. And that's something that I will talk about a little bit when we get to Newcastle as well. But moving on to the Panathinaikos game, overall, it's a solid performance. It's in Greece, so that's a difficult place to go. We see the fans have got their laser pens and all of that stuff. Most of these European matches are going to be difficult road trips. You're going to deal with this atmosphere that's really going to be tough, especially for a young team too. A lot of these places are going to be really difficult to go to. So to see this team go in there and not just win, but win convincingly as well. Yes, there was the goal that we gave up, which is disappointing to not keep a clean sheet there. But I think the overall play was great. You know, I think Nkuku played well, Felix played well, Mudryk played well, Neto played well. Neto gets himself a start in the Newcastle match for that matter. And I think the midfield too is starting to show we've got some quality there. You know, Dewsbury-Hall, Fernandez showing some good moments throughout the match. But I think once again, Vega for me is kind of the underappreciated hero. I think not many, I've seen some people talk about him, but outside of the Chelsea fan base, there aren't many people talking about what a good player he can be. He's shown a lot of quality in early days. And yes, these are Conference League matches, so it's not like I'm saying he's playing against Real Madrid and playing so well, but he's showing a lot of quality early days. And I do think, give him some more time, I think he's going to be very effective, especially considering we tend to have one of our fullbacks step into the midfield. He does that very, very well. So I would not be surprised because Gusto doesn't really do it that effectively. I think he's better getting up and down the line as a wing back. James might be able to do it, but I also see him better as a wing back. Cucurella has had some success there, but also has been a little iffy at times. So Vega for me has consistently done it so far. I would not be surprised at all if we see him stepping into the first team sometime soon, if he's continuing to play the way he does. But I think outside of that, you know, the rest of the back line, once again, a little suspect. Disasi, not great. Badiashile probably had one of his better matches, but he still has those gaps in his game. And then Jorgensen in goal, he's not terrible. I just don't see much from him, unfortunately, because he's not being tested enough. So maybe we'll see that whenever we face Newcastle in the Carabao Cup this midweek. I would like to see, though, some more of what he can do, because we've not really seen him face a good challenge and see, is he up to Sanchez's level? Can he possibly take that starting position from him? We just haven't seen that, unfortunately. But I will say one thing to take away from this Panathinaikos match that I do think I've seen before. It tends to happen because we have a player that we spend a lot of money on and has just not lived up to that price tag, is Mudryk. Fantastic game from him. I mean, probably one of his best performances by far in my opinion. Great assist for the first one. He gets a good header for the second one. I think he assisted the third goal too. So really played well, and he was up and down, getting in dangerous areas and making things happen. It's easily his best performance for me, and I'm speaking as somebody that I've not been the biggest fan of Mudryk. But I think the reaction to Mudryk's performance is the typical reaction that I see whenever he has a good game, which is he needs to start. He needs to get in the first team. He's a great player. He's phenomenal, blah, blah, blah. All this stuff about what a great player he is. It's one game. And I don't want to take away from his performance because, again, I do think it was a great performance. But I feel like there's this feeling around the fan base that anytime you look at Madueke's performance against Wolves, all this talk about what a great player he is and he's one of the best wings in the league and blah, 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 all this stuff. And he's done nothing since. Madueke, Mudryk, they're both players for me. I would even throw Sancho in there as well because he's been good so far, but we have seen a little bit of a drop-off for him. There are these players that whenever they play well or whenever they have a good game or they do something that affects it, it's a good performance, but can we ease up on the hype on him? Because first of all, he's got to do it consistently. He played decently well in the previous Carabao Cup performance and the previous Conference League performance. He's had decent games. He's not really looked that clinical in the final third, though, until this Panathinaikos match. So I really can't say that this is it. He's arrived. He's here. He's finally... Because, again, we've seen these performances. We've seen this performance where he comes in, gets himself a goal, gets himself an assist, does something really great, and everybody just starts flying off the handle about he's here. He's finally arrived. He's finally going to get on the goals, and then he does nothing for the next 10 matches. So can we maybe ease off on the gas a little bit on this Mudryk hype and let him just continue to play, hopefully continue to grow? I would love to see him prove me wrong and consistently bang in goals every match from now on whenever he plays, and then he gets himself into the first team. But as it is, this is just one performance for me. This is one good performance that I don't know if he'll continue on. I don't know if he'll step on the pitch against Newcastle midweek and put in the same performance. I truly don't know. Because in the past, he's not done that. He's not continually put in these good performances. It's been one good performance and then 10 bad or non-existent performances. I just wanted to throw that out there. I know some people will hate on me for trying to ease up on the hype train, but I just feel like we need to stop rating these players so highly when they just had one good game, because we are still a young and inconsistent team. And I think as long as we are there, we need to realize that let's take it game by game. Let's see what they can do next. Give them the praise. Say they did a good job, but let's not suddenly say that, with Palmer, you can say he's been the best player in the league. He's the best player in the league right now on form because he has been doing it consistently from last season until now. Mudryk has not been doing this consistently. He had one really good game. Let's just calm down and see if he can do it again. If he can, great. If not, then he's still clearly got a ways to go. So that's just my 2 cents on it. Again, people are probably going to hate me for it. I don't care. Moving on, though, to the final match of these three, Newcastle. And I think this is a good performance overall. It's not clinical. It's not our best performance, but it's a good performance that ends with a victory. And I think you look back to last season, you look at some of these chances we're giving away to Newcastle. Yes, some of it is relying on luck, especially the Isak chance where he doesn't see Joe Linton on the far side of the box, tries to dribble 3 players and gets it poked out for a corner. Obviously, we had to rely on a bit of luck for that one. But I think overall, defensively, we looked a little bit more solid. I think we put away our chances well. I think it was a good game and a good performance overall. I do think there are still gaps that need fixing, and this is where I will talk a bit about Fofana because he's been getting a lot of praise recently. Don't exactly know why. I know he and Colwill are for some reason are starting center backs, but I really do think that Fofana is a weak link right now. I think Sanchez is too, but I don't know if we have better options. For Fofana, Tosin's been playing pretty well. I think on the ball, still a little iffy at times, but Fofana's also not been great on the ball, and defensively, he's very bad. I mean, that chance that he gave to Isak, what an idiot decision. What a stupid decision from him to just, you're there, you're easily ahead of him. All you got to do is just get it out of bounds or try to head it back to Sanchez. He doesn't really do either. He tries to head it forward, tries to flop and get the call, which he's not going to get because Simon Hooper's an idiot of a referee, but Why? Why take that chance? Why not just stand up under the challenge, get the ball away, and then we don't have to worry about it? But he makes that decision and nearly costs us a goal, nearly costs us the 3 points. He makes decisions like that, and his positioning defensively, it's awful. I mean, just watching where he is, watching his positioning in the back line, there's so many moments where I'm like, you're out of play right now. You're so not connected with the rest of your defense. There's no way if the ball comes anywhere near you that you're going to win that challenge. So for me personally, I don't get what the Fofana hype is about. I don't understand why everybody's claiming that he and Colwell are our best options back there. I don't see it. I personally think Tosin's a better option. Hell, I even think Disasi is a bit of a better option, only because he's at least a good defender. He's also bad on the ball, but I'd rather have a defender who can break up the play and win the ball back than a defender who is constantly out of position, constantly giving the ball away, constantly letting the other team in behind him and giving easy chances to the other team. It's just not good enough from him. Maybe it's because of returning from injury. Maybe he is still dealing with a bit of that. He's still not quite back to his best. You could say all of that. At the moment, we need defenders in there who are going to do the job, and he's not doing it. So that's where I stand on it. But the overall game against Newcastle, I think Palmer obviously back to his best. And I think a lot of that is down to he got a chance to rest midweek, which is part of why I think Maresca, the way he's handling the two competitions, the three competitions really, I think it's working really well. You have one team for midweek, which means you rest your best players like Palmer for the weekends. And it shows that we're getting the best out of him. And he played great. I mean, the ball in behind for the first goal was, people have already talked about it, but that is world class. Phenomenal ball. And then the goal is very well taken too. Yes, Pope maybe should do a bit better, but I mean, he hits it with such venom behind it. It's hard to stop those. Low down, you have to get down quickly. Those are difficult, and especially if he was unsided by the defender. I don't really remember if the defender might have been in his way. Yeah, I think Palmer, great game from him. Jackson also gets on the goal, and again, that chance is one that last season probably would have missed, probably would have put right at the keeper. So to see him comfortably tuck it away, great to see. I think Neto coming in for Sancho is a good option because it gave us a little bit more pace down there. I do think Neto is coming along well. Still has a few gaps in his game here and there, but I think he's got a lot of pace and a lot of energy and willingness to run at people and get up and down the line too. I think helping out defensively maybe is his weakest point at the moment, but I don't expect our wingers to be great at defending. As long as they're getting there and putting a challenge in, I'm fine with it. Just don't make any really stupid decisions like giving away a penalty or giving away a foul at the top of the box. Once again, Caicedo and Lavia in the midfield, really good pairing, really disruptive midfield that, yes, was exposed a few times, but for the most part, I think still kept control very well, kept Newcastle from having a chance to run at our defense. I think the one for the goal, you could see there are still moments when the lapse of concentration can be there. I think it was way too easy for, I think it was Livramento to get away from both of them. So not saying they're perfect, but I think overall they are really coming along well. But I do think, like I said, Lavia, the Liverpool performance was better because I think overall he handled the game really well. I think in this one there were a couple of moments where maybe a little bit too slow to react to a situation. And some of that could just be he's still returning to full fitness, still getting back into the swing of things. So I'm not going to hold it against him too much. If it continues to be a problem, that's when I'll say, okay, well, things need to improve there. But this was his second match back from his injury. So yeah, I think overall he's showing a good commitment in the midfield and a good reading of the game as well. But I think James had a decent game overall. He did have a couple of moments where lapse of concentration, he's not reading the game very well. But I think if we could continue to see some of what we saw with his challenges, his last-ditch challenges, his blocks, some of what he did to save a couple of goals, if we see more of those moments, obviously I'd prefer not to have our defenders having last-ditch challenges to save the goal. I would prefer we're not in those crazy situations, but I do think it shows that he's really coming a long way as far as his defensive willingness, his defensive work rate, because I do think he's lacked some of that at times in the past. So I'm glad to see that from him, and I hope to continue to see more of that as we go forward. Obviously, a lot of people are talking about his best qualities are going forward and getting the balls into the box. But I think defensively, we need fullbacks who are going to shore up the defense and keep the other team from really being effective in front of goal. Ultimately, we're seeing more of that from him right now. we need to continue to see that as the season progresses, and we'll see if Maresca can get the best out of him. But at least for the first 2 games back from injury, he's looked pretty good. Now, obviously, will he stay fit? That's the other question. Still a lot of uncertainties there, but I think on the whole of it, I'm happy with his 2 performances. I think we just need to see a little bit more from him. But final thing to talk about from the Newcastle match is VAR, because, of course, it's once again becoming a huge talking point. What's really ironic to me is throughout most of the season, we've seen that typically you go with the on-field decision. If it's an objective thing, if it's a contact, if foul, that type of thing, typically we see VAR say whatever the on-field decision is. That's why, looking at last week against Liverpool, Sancho's decision on the field was it's not enough for a penalty. VAR didn't overturn it because, well, the on-field decision stands. And then you get to yesterday, and you've got 2 decisions that VAR stepped in and said, hey, you need to look at that again, when the on-field decision, it's an objective one. You've got Man U's, which I haven't really had a good chance to look at it in depth and see, was it a penalty or not? The on-field decision was no penalty, and that's an objective thing. And VAR stepped in and said, no, look at it again. And then you've got the Nkunku one, which on-field decision, it's a penalty, and it's an objective decision. And what's funny to me is, yes, it was light contact and Nkunku goes down a little too easily. But what's funny to me is all these people who are claiming that Somerville's should have been a penalty against us whenever Fofana had a hold of his hand and Somerville throws himself to the ground. It's the same thing. Like, yes, Fofana having a hold of his hand and Byrne or Cher or whoever it was having his hand on Nkunku's shoulder is a little different when you really think about this is not the same as this, but they're very similar in the sense that both could have had enough contact to bring down the player and keep them from getting to the ball and could have been awarded a penalty if the player did not throw themselves to the ground. However, Nkunku's was given a penalty on the pitch, so the fact that VAR stepped in and said, actually, I don't think there was enough contact, when most Chelsea fans are probably going to say, no, that's enough contact. So it's an objective decision. On the field, Simon Hooper gave it. Why is the VAR stepping in? Why is Jared Gillett coming in and saying, actually, you know what? Look at that again, because there's not enough contact for me. So you need to look at it and have your decision changed, your mind changed. It's not what VAR was supposed to do, and they've been consistently not doing that throughout the season. So the fact that all of a sudden now, in our game and in the Man U game, they suddenly changed that. And now VAR all of a sudden is stepping in and saying, hey, your objective decision, you need to change your mind. Or is it subjective? I'm confused about objective and subjective. My mind's all over the place. Clearly, it's the ref's opinion that that was a penalty. Now you're asking him to change his opinion. That's not what VAR is there for. VAR is there clear and obvious. Is it clear and obviously offside? It is? Okay, we'll move on. And even then, what is clear and obvious there? Well, looking at it, it looks like he's this much offside. Then that's not clear and obvious either. But that's a whole nother argument that I'm not going to get into. But definitely for Nkunku, even though looking at it, probably not enough for a penalty, I also don't think VAR should be stepping in and overturning it. I think on-field decision in those moments, it should stand. A little frustrating there. Obviously, it didn't change the outcome of the game. It could have, because it could have been 2-2 at some points. But ultimately, still got the victory. It's just annoying. And also, Simon Hooper on the day was pretty bad in general. The amount of yellow cards we've been getting has been ridiculous, because so many of our yellow cards are not even for anything serious. We're getting fined so often. And it's like, you look at the games where that happens, and most of the time you look in the games where we are getting fined, all of our yellow cards are for the stupidest things. Like the referee just all of a sudden decided, hey, you know what? I didn't like that. You're getting a yellow for that. Maresca and Nkunku both getting yellows because Nkunku wins the ball, and then the referee calls, yes, Nkunku kicks the ball away, so that's his yellow. But Maresca gets a yellow because of his reaction. Okay, so we're just not supposed to react anymore? Cucurella got a yellow because of his reaction after getting kicked off the pitch a couple of games ago. That's all of a sudden, you get a yellow card because you get upset that this guy kicked you off the pitch and into your manager? Like, you're going to card him for that? There have been just several yellows that have not been deserved for us. And all of a sudden we're getting all these fines and people are talking about, oh, Chelsea picking up all these yellow cards. Yeah, look at the yellows though. Look at what we're getting carded for. And I'll guarantee you're going to find several yellows that were undeserved. and it was just because the referee's being a moron on the day. And I will say, overall, the refereeing standard for this season has dropped significantly. There has been a real feel, or just around overall Premier League fans, has been a real feel that the quality of refereeing this year has been pretty poor. And I think a lot of our yellows are down to that lower standard of officiating. So, but that's about it for all of my thoughts on the previous games. Looking forward to this midweek and next weekend. I mean, midweek, Carabao Cup against Newcastle. Of course, we're going to see our typical change, more than likely. We're going to see that whole new team come in. It's going to be really interesting to see how many changes Newcastle makes, and also just to see how good this B team can be, because so far they faced a lot of lower opposition. You think lower league sides, you think some of these European conference teams that are probably League One at best. Panathinaikos maybe could be a championship side, but majority of them have not been that good. So this is really the first true test, and we'll see how much of a first team lineup that Eddie Howe decides to put out in this match. So it's going to be really interesting to see that game happen. And then, of course, the big one next weekend against Man U. And of course, with Ten Hag being sacked today, it does raise a lot of questions as to where Man U are going to be at that point. Because first of all, they will have the new manager bump with Van Nistelrooy stepping in. Don't know how much he's going to be able to do within a week. They probably will beat Leicester in the Carabao Cup, which might give them a bit of a morale boost as well coming in. So it's definitely not going to be as easy as it would have been if they had kept Ten Hag. But also, we do have that curse of anytime the other team sacks their manager and then we play them next weekend, we always tend to have a bit of a rough time. I feel like we lose probably 9 out of 10 of those matches. I feel like, at least just from how it feels, anytime we face a team with a new manager, it always feels like they just come in, and even if we're on a great run of form, it doesn't matter. We could easily lose this match. It's going to be an interesting one. I still do make us the favorites for that match. We'll see. We've not had great luck at Old Trafford over the years, but where they are right now, I think there's definitely a lot of issues with the players there, and it has been fun to laugh at them this season. So I would love to pile more misery on the Man U fans, but at the same time, I also know this could really go badly for us too. So not going to get too ahead of myself, but I am looking forward to these two matches, and I feel like it's going to be really interesting to see where our second team is, and also where it's going to happen, where things are going to fall for us and for Man U this season, because this is a real big chance to pick up some very much needed 3 points on the road, which has honestly been our best chance of picking up 3 points this season, to be fair. Yeah, and then after that, obviously we got Arsenal on the horizon as well, which is going to be a huge match. It's exciting to see what's going to happen next. Like I said, Maresca's been doing a really good job. I think a lot of these players are finding their best form. I think the only questions we have right now are the center back pairing and our goalkeeper. And that's about it. And yes, that's going to cause issues because obviously that's where we're going to be letting in a lot of goals. But I think our midfield and our attack are doing well enough that we can outscore a lot of the opposition. Not everybody, not your Liverpools, maybe not Arsenal, probably not Man City. But I think a lot of the teams in the league, we can be better going forward than they are. And I think that'll be enough to win us quite a few of the games and maybe make us top 4. It's still kind of up in the air. Depends on how some of these teams decide to set up against us. If most of them decide to adopt this idea of sit back, defend, and then hit us on the counter, I think if a lot of teams start doing that, we'll find more games more difficult. Because Newcastle kind of did that at times. It's really setting up for being an interesting and uncertain, unknown season, which is setting up for better than how I felt. Because like I said before, at the beginning of the season, I thought I knew exactly how the season was going to play out. I was not looking forward to it because I had low expectations. And so far, the team has not only exceeded those expectations, they have really blown my expectations out of the water. Going really well right now. I'm still got that hesitancy because there is still the chance that this is all just inconsistency about to rear its ugly head. But as long as this run continues, I'm excited to be a part of it. So that's about it for me. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts over these past 3 matches? What do you expect to see in the next couple? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Chelsea reviews. Also check out the channel. We have a lot of TV show reviews as well as a couple Let's Plays on there. So check those out if you have time. But until next time, I hope you guys have a great day. I will talk to y'all later. Peace out.